Okay, thanks for spending your morning here with me. As I talk about what I know and what I research about multicultural education, the impact of self-awareness on mitigating bias. And I'm happy to be here. I'm honored to be here because all of you guys are, I consider, high caliber professors. So I don't know what I'm doing here, but I feel humbled and I feel so honored to be here. So thank you for spending your morning with me. And I hope it's a blessing to you. And I hope you can gain some insights, even though you guys are already so smart. So anyways, I want to talk to you about multicultural education. I come here as a faculty and as your colleague, and I also come here as an immigrant. And so that's me in the little box, and kind of show you where I'm coming from. I'm here as a faculty, I'm here as a colleague, I'm here as an immigrant. I'm also here as a former instructional designer or curriculum builder for 2 other Christian universities. And what I noticed is they always embed multiculturalism, diversity, inclusivity in their programs. And I had to make sure I do that. And one of those schools, I was blessed enough to be able to build their California teaching credential program. And so one of the things that I really had to embed in there is multicultural education. So that's a big thing in California K-12 institutions right now, is to always embed multicultural education or build a multicultural classroom. Okay. And the reason for that is because California Commission on Teacher Credential requires California K-12 teaching candidates to pass all California Teaching Performance Expectations, or TPEs. In fact, TPE number 6, educators need to recognize their own biases so that they can work to mitigate any negative impact these biases may have in their classrooms. And I totally get it. I was a K-12 teacher. You know, getting 20, 25 students per year, 9 months out of a year, sometimes more. I was in middle school. You have these rotating students coming in and out. They're from different backgrounds. They have different learning abilities, learning disabilities. They come from different family dynamics. And I think that the CCT is pretty right on, because here in California, the classrooms are just full of students with different backgrounds. And teachers have to be prepared and have to be aware of their bias. And that's one thing I learned as a K-12 teacher, and that's also one thing I learned as I built classes for other universities. Okay, today we're going to go over how different organizations define implicit bias, ways to discover our own implicit biases, how our brains form implicit bias and how they stay there, identify research studies on the importance of self-awareness of implicit biases, and explore multicultural education. Come up with ideas to build multicultural classrooms. I know we don't have our own classrooms. I wish we do, because I had my own classroom as a middle school, and I just have students rotate in and out each period. Over here, we don't own a classroom, so we don't get to decorate our walls and represent something multicultural, represent ourselves and our students. Okay, this presentation has interactive questions. So what I need is for you to type your response to the question in the text box. And after typing your response, click on the submit buttons. It has interactive questions. It'll have time for question sign, and type in your response. I put here in the bottom, overachievers wanted. And I need overachievers in this room and in Zoom, because overachievers, you have them in your classroom. They're the ones who want to put in their insights all the time. They're the ones who want to contribute to the discussion. They're the ones who are always going to be saying the answer and not letting the others answer it. So I need those today because I don't want to do the anyone, Bueller type of thing. I want people to just, you know, participate. Yeah, and then those are the questions that are going to be addressed for you and that I would like for you to participate in. As far as Q&A for me, questions for me, we can save it at the end of the presentation. That way I cover all the materials and then we can go over that. So this presentation has video clips and they're embedded in there. If you're in Zoom, I love this because it rhymes. If you're in Zoom, you'll be prompted to click on the play button on your screen. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a countdown, 3, 2, 1. When I click on 1, the people on Zoom can push the play button on their screen. That way we kind of all finish at about the same time. But when you're in the room, not in Zoom, Dr. Zeus, you'll be able to watch the video in this room. So you don't have to do anything. You don't need to click on the play button. We're good? Mm-hmm. All right. Oh, Mark already answered. Oh, no, okay. Oh, what does the term implicit bias means to you? Let's start with that one. I put here 30 seconds, and that's because we can go on and on in that. Some of you like to write dissertations. I kind of just need the first answer that comes to your mind. And you can see the answer of other people. So I'm gonna hide it for now. All right, I'm going to read some of the answers. Hopefully, people in Zoom were able to participate. According to Mark Schwartz, bias is a well-worn path in your brain that causes you to see the world. Awesome. Absolutely. Jeffrey Bird, preconceived opioid. Opioid stuff. Michael Salmer, unconscious prejudice toward other based on some stereotype. Amy, ideas and preferences that we hold toward people who are different. DR, Dr. Worte, bias that we are awe.
Dorothy, we may need a little more time on that. We're gonna.
I was avoiding dissertation, but hey, you know, Stephen Felix, bias that's not conscious is rooted in something. And Mark Dusek, assumptions that I have that a part of how I think and value. And Jim W, unintentional prejudice. Dr. Remy, bias from my background, I would assume. Terry, opinion about something that, and KRYBF, I don't know who that is. Opinion based on own experience. Brian, bias that one is unaware of. Perfect. Liana, thank you for participating in Zoom. A worldview or presupposition, what you have been exposed to. Gail, implicit bias is a bias that is inherent or anticipated. Sounds like a textbook definition. E, non-explicit bias. Chemo, bias inherent in the, all right. Thank you, I have 100% participation, yay. All right, let's define implicit bias according to Kirwan Institute for the Study of Race and Ethnicity at Ohio State University. Implicit bias, also known as implicit social cognition. Implicit bias refers to the attitudes or stereotypes, which Michael mentioned stereotype, that affect our understanding, actions, and decisions in an unconscious manner. Implicit bias affects a person's understanding, actions, and decisions in an unconscious manner, activated involuntarily and without a person's awareness or intentional control, and resides deep in the subconscious. It is a human reaction rooted from inaccurate information or reason and is potentially harmful. And that's from the National Museum of African American History and Culture. So implicit bias, from all the meanings that people shared and from those organizations, it's often expressed in very subtle ways and is undetectable without tools and careful introspection. That's also from the American Bar Association. So you guys got 100% of that, even though you didn't get to finish your question. I kind of know it. All right. The next slide contains an embedded video on implicit bias and sample scenarios of our implicit biases and the importance of being aware of our own implicit biases. It's about 8 minutes long, and you don't need to type it in if you're in Zoom. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go on the next slide if you're in Zoom, and then I'm going to count 3, 2, 1, and when I click on 1, you can play the play button if you're in Zoom, but not when you're in the room. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and play it if you're in Zoom.
Implicit bias exists when we unconsciously hold attitudes towards others or associate stereotypes with them. For example, we often harbor negative stereotypes about others without consciously realizing that we do so. Implicit bias, which is also called unconscious bias or implicit social cognition, is a prejudice that is deep-seated within the brain, below the conscious level. Studies have demonstrated implicit bias against racial groups, genders, LGBTQ, and other marginalized groups. We may even be prejudiced against our own group, although we tend to favor our in-group with positive stereotypes and disfavor out-groups with negative stereotypes.
The immediate feeling you get or the immediate thoughts you have about a person, an assumption you feel, just anything you feel really extends somewhere from an experience you had or your upbringing.
It depends on the region you're from, the country you're from, the background you grew up in. That shapes the person's unconscious bias.
I think sometimes you don't even realize it, but your own actions, maybe the way you treat others as opposed to treating others that look like you or that act like you or that are your friend.
Implicit bias often runs counter to people's conscious, expressed beliefs. Few physicians espouse racially discriminatory views, and yet doctors tend to recommend less pain medication for Black patients than for white patients with the identical injury. In other words, people can be explicitly unbiased, yet implicitly biased, according to psychologist Daniel Kelly and colleagues.
One of my closest friends since high school, we worked on a lot of projects together, we've been in a lot of classes together. Sometimes we'd be working together in a group project, for example, and she would say stuff like, oh, you're good at math, you're good at science, here, you can say this part of the project or something. I don't hold it against her or anything, and she doesn't mean any harm by it, but obviously there's that implicit sort of bias or stereotype that Asians are better at math and science.
Implicit bias has been found in a large array of studies using various tests, but much of the evidence for the phenomenon comes from Harvard University's Project Implicit website, home of the Implicit Association Test, or the IAT. Literally millions of people have visited this site and taken various tests that ask them to respond rapidly to questions that require them to associate Blacks or whites, males or females, or young or old, etc., with positive or negative words.
Most of the implicit biases that I've run into are probably positive ones, things that come with being white male and having height and having a good voice and things like that.
Professor Nosek and colleagues tested more than 700,000 subjects and found that more than 70% of white subjects more easily associated white faces with positive words and black faces with negative words, concluding that this was evidence of implicit racial bias. In fact, additional evidence indicates that measures of implicit bias better predict people's conduct than measures of explicit bias.
I think that if you are anyone, to be blunt, that's not a white male, you potentially feel that implicit bias. Maybe you're just looking for someone that is like you because you like you, and so you want to be around more people like you. But what's really rooted under that is that you potentially don't think that someone else is as smart or as capable, and that is coming from a place of implicit bias.
Now here's some good news. Various scientists have criticized the IAT. They point out, for example, that individuals who take the test on different dates often score substantially differently. Even IAT supporters admit that implicit bias, at least as demonstrated by the test, is widespread but relatively minor and has only a small impact upon people's real-world actions. In other words, the results of the test are not strong enough to predict particular behaviors by individual people. However, let's not get too comfortable. Even if the IAT cannot predict the future conduct of any one individual on a given occasion, it still indicates how groups of people will act on average, and that is worrisome. For example, few people openly advocate for discrimination in hiring, but white applicants receive 50% more responses from potential employers than do black applicants with the same resume. Likewise, college professors are substantially more likely to answer student emails if the students' names indicate that they are probably white than if the names sound like they belong to black students. And in one study, online course instructors were 94% more likely to respond to discussion posts by white male students than by other students.
There are a lot of opportunities to promote people within the workplace. It doesn't happen because of different biases. People assume, a woman is of a certain age or they're married and you think, oh, she's gonna wanna have kids, so we're not gonna give her this really tough, big project.
When I graduated from West Point in 2009, I went to my first organization, the first unit assignment. I was the only Latino officer in a group of about 100 other officers. Yeah, I think there was a lot of hesitation in really following my lead as the leader for the organization. I think it hindered in some way the ability for us to build cohesive trust within our organization and really have that going into a combat environment.
Because implicit bias operates at a mostly unconscious level, it is difficult for individuals to overcome. No existing training regime has proven particularly effective at de-biasing implicit bias. But fortunately, some research shows that stereotypes can be undone and that safeguards can be put in place to minimize their impact. For example, women used to make up only a relatively small percentage of the musicians in orchestras. But when orchestras began holding blind auditions, where the applicants played behind a curtain and their genders were unknown to the judges, the percentage of women chosen to play in symphony orchestras doubled. Perhaps we can put a dent in implicit bias after all.
These biases are sometimes so deep-rooted within us or within our culture that we don't even realize that they are biases.
We can have mutually, beneficial conversation and really benefit from learning from each other and really understand that we're all not that different.
Listen, really absorb the experiences of those around you, especially those who come from backgrounds that are unlike yours.
Learn something new about a person, and then that will kind of help shift that bias, because now you actually ask that person, or now you get to know that person.
There are so many opportunities to engage with others, to say, I don't want to do this again. Can you help me not do that? And people are willing to have those conversations.
All right, I'm gonna check with our Zoom participants, make sure they're good. Are you guys okay in Zoom?
Yeah, we're good, Dorothy. The problem is that there was a double audio on it. I finally muted it on the one on Zoom, but maybe something you want to think about for the future for anybody doing any type of audio presentation.
Got it. Thank you. Sorry about that. All right.
Can I ask a semi-related question here? Is it possible to show a video just by sharing your screen on Zoom?
Um,
You have it on your background, play it, and share your screen.
There's tons of lag.
There's tons of lag.
It's possible, it just doesn't, it's not very smooth.
yeah, I tried it and yeah. I was kind of playing around with this because this is what I'm going to use with my students, but
So
yeah.
if we're going to show a video, we have to have some other kind of third software to do it like that, like what we're using here.
Sorry?
If we're going to use a video in Zoom, we have to have a third software to do it with.
This is just a web app. You just log in the web and upload your videos in it. It's all embedded in the PowerPoint, and then you play it. You just need to have 2 tabs that they have it open. Does that help?
So you can that. But
Yeah.
You can use video in Zoom.
You don't have to install anything.
You can just make sure that you press use computer audio when you show a video. And I would not show a very long video. If it's a short video, you can have it like in your just share screen. On the bottom left in Zoom, there's going to be a use computer audio. Make sure you do that. Otherwise, it's going to get the reflection from your speakers back into Zoom, and then it'll be good.
So you can show your video.
Yeah, I do it all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, if it's like a longer video like that, it might eventually lag. If it's a 2-3 minute video, then I think it'll be okay.
Okay, next one. Okay, the next slide has an interactive question. So type your response to the question in a text box and click on submit button, and I'll be able to get your answers pretty soon. And this is going to be the same question over and over again after each video. It's the easiest question I could ever ask. What new insights have you gained from this video? This time you have 1 minute and 30 seconds. Nine seconds. Sorry. All right, I'm going to read some of your answers. I'm not going to be able to do all of them because it'll take a while. I can definitely share the results of this presentation so you get to see everybody what they wrote. Mark Schwartz, I thought it was insightful how the implicit bias is not something, oops. Wow, 2 paragraphs, all right. It's not something people are aware of. So it's difficult to tease it out. As people are confronted with their own possible bias, racism, it's easy to get defensive about it since we don't know we have it. I thought the idea that someone can be biased and yet that bias doesn't necessarily predict behavior was interesting too. Jeffrey Bird, implicit bias is a bigger issue than I was aware of originally. Need to be introspective in assessing some of my own implicit bias. Perhaps taking the Harvard test could be. And I'll give you more information about the Harvard IAT test. And this is something that a lot of teaching candidates in California, a lot of them do so well in the other parts. For some reason, they don't do so well as far as being aware of their bias. And I think that has a lot to do with them saying, oh, I don't have any bias. But what CCTC wants from the teaching candidates is to just admit that, yay, I have bias and I'm doing whatever it takes to minimize it in my classroom. Okay, I'm gonna close this. I'm gonna pick on other people's answers later. So I'm not having any bias towards Mark Schwartz or Jeffrey Bird. They're just on top of my list.
Yeah, he keeps coming up first. I don't know what that's about.
Maybe because you're the first one to log in? I don't know. Yeah. There you go. Okay, so the theme of implicit bias that we learned, we are unaware and unconscious of our own implicit biases, and implicit biases run in our subconscious minds. We're not even aware until we use different tools to be aware of them. Implicit bias is potentially harmful. We all have it, but it's potentially harmful and it leads to discrimination. For these reasons, it's even more important for educators to recognize and work to mitigate their implicit biases. Okay, we have a next slide. If you're in Zoom, just kind of try to turn down your own computer. I'm gonna keep my volume up for the whole room here. I'm gonna give you the links to these YouTube videos that I showed you. That way later you can watch it again. The next slide contains embedded video about how our brains are wired to make quick judgments or assumptions about people. All right, so if you're in Zoom, when I count 1, go ahead and click it. 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and click on the play button.
What would the world look like if everybody were aware of the stereotypes that they have and the biases that they have? When we talk about unconscious bias, we're basically saying our worldview can actually exert the influence beyond our conscious awareness, and it creates ambiguity.
You go to an engineer who's built something extremely innovative, and you say, who do you think your user is? This is where I have the most fun. My name is P.B. Raman, and I led that work on Android accessibility for 3 years. Write out everything that you think you know about your user with respect to abilities, inabilities, special abilities, disabilities. Almost every assumption that you write down on that whiteboard about this is the user I think I'm building for is questionable. Because our various unconscious biases define the boundaries you're unwilling to expand.
These biases are the shortcuts that our brain has created so that we can deal with the information that we process every single day.
Right when we see anyone, whether we think about it or not, we are implicitly, automatically making judgments about how warm and competent that person or thing is.
All humans need to make decisions, and so we fill in the blanks because our brains are wired to do that, and we fill in with things we don't know with past experience. So you pattern out
to someone I think I should hire, so I'm going to hire you versus this person because they didn't match. I can't fill in the blank because they don't look like me or they're not from my same background. And so I can't see how they're going to make the jump.
Every single person is great at things that you may not expect them to be, but it's really hard for us to see that when we're so powerfully guided by the things we expect to be true in the world. I grew up surrounded with this conversation about what you can't do and what you won't be able to do. My name is Enrica, and I'm an autistic software engineer. The first time I go through the performance review process, I was asked for 5 strengths. It was the first time that I had ever been prompted to think in that way about myself. It was really a life-changing moment for me.
When we are working in our day-to-day jobs, we are still making judgments about the people around us, about the resumes we see, about the employees that we're trying to decide whether to put them on teams or not.
People are very wedded to the idea that they can perceive something objectively, and statistically they're wrong. But it's hard. You become attached to this idea that you can assess something by looking at it.
These subtle assumptions we make about people can have lasting effects on who we're promoting, who we're hiring, who we're putting in leadership positions. We have the responsibility to understand the assumptions that we make and understand the errors that we make. But it's not just for the collective good. If you take the time to understand more about this, there are things that you can implement for yourself that'll help you develop as a leader and to do your job even better.
It made me realize how often I have a very strong belief that it's simply incorrect. When I look at one of these evaluation situations, the first question is how can I eliminate the sources of potential bias and leave just the data so we can actually make better decisions.
If you're not conscious of the biases that you have, you're just not contributing at the level you could, and you're not innovating at the level you could. And so your products won't be as good. Your results won't be as good.
When you think outside the box with respect to the assumptions you made about how somebody would use this wonderful thing you built, and when you sort of broaden that perspective as to who you take the bush for, you build something even bigger.
All right. Is everybody in Zoom okay? Are they done too with the video?
What would the world look like if everybody?
Okay, sorry about that. All right. I think you guys know the next question for this video, your insights. Oops. All right, computer's slow right now. Okay. All right, 1 minute and 30 minutes. 30 seconds, sorry. Okay, 67%. I'm going to review some answers. Mark Dusick, for the common good, make the unconscious conscious. And Jim W., we all think that we can think objectively about anything or anyone. But this simple is not possible. Dr. Remy said, I may be unaware of my implicit bias. Implicit bias could become preemptive in decision making. And Terry, understanding your bias and others can expand your thinking, solutions, and creativity. Let's do one more. CryBF said, good information and good reminder about our thoughts and feelings and how we act. Okay, thank you. Okay. Again, you can see everybody's responses later on when I share this with you. So our implicit biases, we all know now that it's in our subconscious. We're unconscious about it. You know, we don't even know sometimes until something or somebody points it out. So how do you discover your own implicit biases? For me, the number one answer is prayer. And I think that you all agree prayer is the best thing that you could ever do, because if you ask God something to shed light on whatever it is that you're doing, He will give it to you. For a while now, my husband and I have been doing this kind of prayer once a month. And I know you probably do it more often than once a month, but we've done this before. We would have a silent prayer together, and we would ask God to show us who are the people that we've hurt intentionally or unintentionally, whether it's bias or something, and who are the people that hurted us before, whether it's bias or anything else. And that exercise we did the first time we did it, it's so powerful. It took us a long time because God was just showing us images of people, you know, during our prayer, even people from like years ago that maybe heard us before, and maybe unconsciously we carry it with us. And so releasing that to God really helped us. So now we do it once a month. When we did it, it took us, I don't know, about an hour or so. And so what I always say is, you know, it's like cleaning your house. If you clean it once a week, you know, you do it often, you'll only take a few minutes. And that's what we're doing now, me and my husband. But if you neglect your house after 2 weeks, a month or so, not that I know anything about that, you kind of need some kind of deep cleaning, and it'll take a long time. So I think if we have time later, we could do this. And I think what happens is the first time you do it, if you haven't done it, it's for us, it's mind blowing. So I just kind of want to invite you to do that sometime, because God showed me images of people who I just didn't know that I may have hurted them because of my own implicit bias or something. And so for me, prayer is the number one tool if you want to know more about your own bias. You can also have some reflective exercises. Example, journaling. I do a lot of journaling, and someday my grandkids will read my journals. There's lots of them. If I ever have grandkids, if my sons would ever date, I would get grandkids. But someday they will see my journals. And it's just insights that God gave me, and that's how I do it. I journal. I draw. I'm not as good as Dr. Steven, but I just kind of doodle around, and that's how I get stuff from my mind and what's going on in me. Spend some time alone and talk to a friend. I have a friend I still hang out with. she's my best friend from high school, and we're still best friends. And I can tell her anything. She can tell me anything. And she knows that I'll be mad and she'll be mad, but we kind of know that we're honest to each other. So if you have that person, your spouse, your best friend, yeah, ask them, you know, am I biased? Am I biased towards some people? And they'll tell you, because you really don't know if you are until you have these tools. It's kind of like if you're eating spinach salad and you walk around after you had that spinach salad and you didn't know you have a spinach between your teeth. And nobody tells you, you walk around, and then finally at the end of the day, you know, you look in the mirror and there's spinach. How come nobody told me I have spinach between my teeth? It's you either do it on your own or somebody tells you. And most likely some people will probably not tell you because it's such a sensitive subject. So these reflective exercises are good. And of course, the Bible, we have biblical studies professors here. The Bible is the light of your path. It will illuminate everything that you need to know about yourself. So for me, these exercises work. It could be like an artist like Steven. I know artists who, they are able to just analyze themselves because all this thinking that they do when they're painting or when they're doing something creative, you know, ideas just emerge in their head. So yeah, reflective exercises, prayers. And the implicit test that Harvard created. It's been developed years ago, and it's what was mentioned in the video. It's called implicit.harvard.edu. And if we have time later, I don't know how much time we have, we can definitely take that too. And this link will be shared to you after the workshop. I administered this test to my students from last semester. I figured they're going to be future teachers. They want to be teachers. They need to know what their biases are, and they need to be aware of that because they're going to have 20, 25 kids from different backgrounds coming into their classroom 9 months out of the year. And if they're not aware of that bias, one student will, no matter what you do, one student will be close to your teaching. You guys don't know it. The student doesn't know it. So I just always make sure that my students take these implicit biases. It's better to take them alone in a comfortable place. It's a little bit on a stressful side. I know some of my students were like sighing when they were taking the test. It's kind of like a video game. They show you images and you click and stuff. And at first I didn't agree with my results. I took it again, but then the reflective exercises, my prayers for God, kind of showed me, you know, there is something there. There is something to this result. This is what happened to, I mean, I heard God, this is what happened to you, Dorothy. This is what happened with a group of people with you. Do you remember what happened with you, you know, when you were little? And I remember that, and I did not know that I was unconsciously, you know, snubbing away people because of something. I didn't know, but through the reflective exercises, through the test, I was able to be aware of it. And I was able to teach better because I took away the walls. So how are implicit biases formed and how do they stay locked in our conscious minds? Mind scientists have found that most of our actions occur without our conscious thoughts, allowing us to function in our extraordinarily complex world. This means that our implicit biases often predict how we'll behave more accurately than our conscious values. And why do implicit biases happen? Our minds process about 11 million bits of information every second. So our brains often resort to biases as a shortcut to make sense of so much information quickly. The more information we're exposed to, even if the information is unfair or inaccurate, the stronger and more deeply ingrained our biases become. Our cultural backgrounds, lived experiences, and exposure to certain beliefs can all contribute to our implicit biases. So bias is how our minds streamline thinking so we can quickly make sense of the world. Our brains are designed to perform quick judgments and unconsciously as a protection against the threats of our world. And over time, this way of processing has persisted between individuals and groups of people. Although bias is automatic, with practice, we can learn to change our thinking to allow a fuller and increased understanding of others. So our brains have two facets, reflective and reflexive. Reflective, you know what that means through reflection. You have this controlled processing in your brain. Your brain requires sufficient time to process content. Reflexive is your reflex. It's often unconscious or implicit and operates quickly. So the unconscious response may be to protect oneself from harm. So neuroscience tells us that the brain has the ability to differentiate between those who are like us or in group, or those who are not like us or out group. And the brain automatically assigns a person as someone in the in group, or like us, or in the out group, or not like us. And I remember when I was kind of creating this and I had this slide, I remember my first day here at Life Pacific, the second time around, not in 2014, but I met Joy during my first day, and I already feel that in group with her. She feels like this daughter I never had, and we just clicked and we connected, and you know, she probably feels I'm like her mother, but we have this connection right away, and that's part of being human. We have this connection in our in group. But we also have the out group that we have to kind of be aware of. So sometimes the brain will assign person as other, which can represent this person as threatening or non-threatening. And through awareness, we activate the neurons that enable us to have experiential insight. The brain then assigns the other to either an in-group or out-group and determine if we should show less or more interest and empathy for that person. So the next slide has an embedded video on blind spots and how we can reflect on our blind spots so that we can make better decisions. It's about 2 minutes long. And I'm gonna count 3, 2, 1, and then when I say 1, go ahead and zoom if you can play it on your screen so we finish about the same time. Try to put your volume down so you don't get that double sound.
Are you seriously considering her as a candidate?
Speak English. It's not me. I'm not like that. You call it non-specific. Science calls it blind spot. Our unconscious mind is a mysterious and powerful thing. It makes 90% of our decisions without us even knowing. Our brains are overloaded with 11 million pieces of information every second. Yet we can only process about 40 of them. So we're wired to make cognitive shortcuts, using past experiences to make assumptions. And you know what happens when we assume? Our unconscious mind can put us on autopilot, determining where we sit, who we eat lunch with, who we turn to for advice, and who we choose to offer a helping hand. Living our lives with blind spots can put us in a tunnel. Same point of view, same decisions, same outcomes. We can find ourselves trapped in the land of snap judgments and misconceptions. We've all been on both the giving and receiving end of blind spots. Think about it. Who's talented? Who's able? Who can I trust? Who belongs? We've all been there. Blind spots are part of the human condition. Our choices have consequences for us and the people we interact with. By accepting that blind spots exist, we can stop. Imagine what possibilities exist if we could do it all over again. Different perspectives, inclusive relationships, diverse networks.
better outcomes. Seeing people who they really are. People like you with unlimited potential. We all have blind spots. Once you accept that you have them, you can choose to do something about it. It's time to check your blind spots and focus on what's possible.
I'm sorry I didn't count 3, 2, 1 for the Zoom, so you can watch this again later. Sorry about that. It's kind of hard when I don't see you. I can't neglect people that I can't see. So, all right. I think you know what the next question is. What new insights have you gained from this video? Give us some time to load. Anytime. There. All right, let me go over some answers. Michael said it made me think about using culture fit as factor in hiring can be damaging since this is a high degree of in-group thinking going on in that analysis. Thank you. I'm gonna close this. I'm gonna choose the ones I haven't chosen so they don't feel bad. Jim W. We all have blind spots because of the way our minds work. So this is a result of sin or the way we were created. That's why I didn't embed anything biblical, scriptural in there, because you guys will do that anyways. Brian, the importance of reflecting on my initial responses and reactions to people and situations to identify my biases. Liana, I do not want to appear to be a know-it-all, but after the years as a short-term missionary and teaching on culture and biases, I am not learning anything new. However, it reinforces my thoughts and continues to remind me of the need to be alert to the fact that I do have biases and to seek to eliminate them. Dr. Daniel Prado, be more intentional in connect with others, not in the way my first impression says to me to do. Intentional in knowing others that my unconscious brain said it's different and not like it. Thanks. All right, let's go to the next slide. Implicit biases. I know that right now it seems like it's always about race, but implicit biases covers all kinds of biases, not just race. And it covers, as a teacher, it covers the student's ability, learning ability or disability, behavioral ability or behavioral disability, mental ability or mental disability, gender, religion, I know that religions sometimes become a subject that's so conflicting with some people. I'm not Foursquare. I wish I am, but I'm a United Methodist church. And I'm from a United Methodist church. So if you've been watching the news, United Methodist is right now an oxymoron because we're not united. In fact, we're going to be split. And I think a lot of the stuff, the decisions that the bishops made and international or American United Methodist, it's all because of biases. They know the Bible in and out, but they're not aware of their biases. And yeah, my pastor said we could be split, so we don't know. Political affiliations, subject that cause so much high emotions right now. I tell my husband and my son, who's 30, don't talk about politics in a restaurant because I don't know who's going to hear you, and I don't want to be there when that happens. So please, we try not to talk about politics. I know in K-12, some teachers got in trouble for telling them who their parents should vote. We don't do that here. I just tell my students before, I'm not going to tell you who I'm voting until you get out of here, you graduate, and we become friends someday. But right now, I'm not telling you. That's none of your business. Weight, we can be also biased towards weight. I know for me, coming from the Philippines is like, we're all just sisters there and everything. I come here to America and women look at other women from head to toe. I don't know what the big deal is. There's always this thing about how people look here in the westernized world. And so that's implicit bias. Socioeconomic status. We may not have some kind of a racial discrimination in the Philippines because we were all Filipinos. We're all Filipinos, at least back then. But I know that we have some kind of tension, socioeconomic status between the haves and the have-nots. Know that if you live in the city, you're the educated one, you can afford a university. We didn't have student loans or anything or grants like that. If you live in the country, you're probably not educated, you're poor, so there's always that tension between the two. It's like Downton Abbey. If you've seen Downton Abbey, it's like there's a split between the rich and the poor. And other kinds of stuff. So the next slides are based on the research studies on the importance of self-awareness of implicit biases in the training of different professionals in their fields. For physician training, cultural competency coursework in medical schools resulted to increased awareness of their blind spots, which results to optimal patient care. And I know either you have had experience or somebody you know have had experience with doctors who don't have the best bedside manners, who have, so we all have those stories. So now they are, not now, but they have been training physicians to be more culturally responsive with their patients. Another study in physician training, recognizing implicit bias in health professions, education, influences patient outcomes. And the next slide contains an embedded video on why being aware of implicit biases has been an essential part of the physician training. And the video is about 2 minutes long, and I won't forget the Zoom people. Okay, if you're in Zoom, I'm gonna count 3 to 1, and when I say 1, the final one, you can go ahead and click on the play button. So 3, 2, 1.
The body of evidence is very, very deep, that a lot of what we do is based on very rapid unconscious processes, and that we respond to people very, very quickly without even knowing it, based on years and years of exposure to ideas. So we store ideas together. Let's say a physician walks into the room and the patient is Black, right? And this is a physician who is great, genuinely, consciously unbiased, wants to provide the best care. has very high levels of unconscious racial bias, as do 80% of white Americans. So our physician, our hero, walks in, sees the patient, gets interrupted twice, is worried about another patient, is tired. What happens then is what we all do is we rely on stored information about the person. We're like, okay, this is what I know about Black people, right? This isn't conscious, less likely to comply, right? These are stereotypes, it's not true. Less intelligent. Without even thinking about it, our hero sits down with good intentions and is already seeing this patient through his framework, the lens, because the unconscious processes are trying to be efficient, like quick, what do we know about Black people? Quick. Maybe eye contact or body language reflects this, right? And now the patient is, a little hesitant, and maybe that hesitation is interpreted in a way that's consistent with the stereotype. We finally got NIH funding to recruit a very large stratified random sample of medical students from 49 schools. In that study, we were actually just looking at medical school and student factors that affected bias among graduating physicians. We have another study right now in the field in which we're trying to prevent any detrimental effects of the experience of race in white medical schools for Black medical students. I believe the healthcare systems are out in front and saying, we're not ignoring this. We know that our intentions are extremely strongly egalitarian. It's part of our principles, but we also know that there's this huge body of work that says maybe sometimes we're not even aware of this. Well, we're going to make sure that we can know.
All right. Time for break, according to Daniel. There's some.
Take a 3-minute break just to stretch, go to the bathroom if you need to do the restroom. We also have coffee, water, and fruit. You need some. And then we'll come back and finish the
Yeah, when you come back, I have that question available for you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Not yet, I'm going to move today after that, so it's a block better. I'm sure it's all pretty nice. Great. Thank you so much.
No. Yeah. What we used to do in K-12 is we share a calendar so that when the market history is yeah. I like it because I meet with them too. I want to meet with them and we have built-in stuff, and that's how I prepare. So I don't have to have discussion forums. So yeah.
Hey, Dorothy.
Oh yeah, sorry.
This is not God.
Oh, I'm supposed to. I can't start it. Oh,
you're fine. Can you hear me?
Yeah, but I'm not supposed to load it yet. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick question. When we're listening to the videos on Zoom, we're still getting the reverb. So I'm going back and forth between listening to your sound, listening to my sound. I'm wondering, and not necessarily this time, but for future sessions, if perhaps the participants there have the volume on theirs and you don't have the volume on yours, and then those on Zoom can also regulate the volume.
Thinking that maybe next time they can also play their own.
Oh, yeah.
Hard, yeah. I had this plan when I thought everybody's in Zoom, so I would turn off my own computer, but I didn't know we are gonna have some people in the same room.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. I just, from the outside, just trying to help so we can avert problems for when the students are actually there, because this is a great presentation.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I didn't think about the double sound thing.
Yeah. Things we have to work out as we go along, right?
Yeah, but you know what? I'm using it for my students, so I definitely can turn down my volume when I play it with my students.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I can't put the volume down right now because there's people in the room.
Gotcha.
I think it'll work if you're by yourself in your office or at home, and then the students are at home too. So I think that'll work because I'm using it. That's the way. I'm not doing discussion boards. This will be part of my participation and discussion.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, great, super. Thanks, Dorothy.
Thank you.
Now I understand some of the things that are going on in Seattle.
You said you know a way to do these movies?
Yeah, just ask me something.
Yeah, it was, yeah, we think that taken care of. I don't know how or who, but yeah, it got taken care of. Because every time I was creating a new, I know it disappeared. Send me a notice that it was being created, and I go in there, and so it was kind of like, yeah, and now it's there.
Oh, yes, no, I really dialed in on that idea because that's really close to the rest. And our brains, part of this neuroscience, that our brains are instantly doing that. And it's, you know, that really lines up with that stuff it does. Well, I hope you guys enjoy the book too.
Oh, yeah.
Open the video.
You know, you're saying that's like we're getting blown off by two directions. Already up the radio.
For example, this
I mean, these are just like very precise.
Carol very much that. She has she loves getting outside, she loves that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's what's conflict. Most night you reach outside.
I'm just saying,
Sometimes you've actually got to hear others on the back seat. Everybody else likes it. She's been in the front.
I've never seen it before.
So sometimes it's just to the Crazy in some ways, but it's.
I will be changing today. On the other side of the hall. I think because the office they have you in, they told me it's just kind of made, you know, from room that existing.
That used to be part of the faculty.
Yeah, so I can't control the lights in there. Sometimes they go off because people next door.
That's right, you could be in there and turn your lights on.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
And so which office?
That's a good question. Maybe that's the one they want. Okay. I mean, I know the office number, but I don't know if that would mean anything. I don't know which one.
Dorothy would have done this, so I think you can bring it in. Hold on.
Hi.
We got some years old.
Okay, let's continue. Yes, that's right. And brand new.
So how's everybody doing?
About another school year. No, Mark, he's so. Pretty good, Steve, how you doing? So that's got to be really hard.
I call you with his thing, it's terrible, but. No, a little bit. I could knock the eyes.
Allison started doing why? She's got a lot of experience with that. All we did was she's got to get every time in her mind flow. So it's a lot of school time. He's also social.
I don't have a bell.
It's kind of long.
Love your grandmother.
It's not going.
It looks like everything's gonna work out good. Oh, I'm sorry, sorry.
Sorry.
It's right behind you.
You might not use it this semester, maybe.
One, two, three, eyes on me. Sorry. It works for the kids. All right. I'm sure you remember the last video, I hope. The video was about the physician training and how they embed cultural responsiveness in there. So
How long will you be this?
1 minute, 23 seconds.
Oh, it's gone.
Just need someone who's.
Oh, Gail, there's always going to be one of those in this classroom. Anyways, according to E, other factors like being tired, stressed, rushed, etc., can affect our abilities to deal with implicit bias. We stored in our brain ideas unconscious and create biases. Chemo's blank. Brian says that bias is bad. Sorry, I can't remember the video. So profound. Liana, it reminds me that our facial expressions and body language can also evidence bias, I guess. So many ways that implicit bias can be visible to others yet hidden from me. Bias is bad. Being cultural responsive to differences is an important part of respecting all and valuing our differences. Thank you. Okay, more research study. In nursing education, self-reflection is an important part of clinical practice and an invaluable tool in the ongoing process of reaching your full potential. That's from UNA's 2020 study. Again, in nursing education, cultivating self-awareness can help provide culturally competent care to patients and their families. Clinical legal education, teaching psychology to develop cultural awareness with real-life examples of how unconscious categorization affects our behavior. In journalism, inducing awareness of implicit gender bias through the IAT test, which is the Harvard test, strongly reduces the production of biased journalistic content. Journalists who are made aware of their implicit cognitive biases before making their journalistic decisions are more sensitive to avoid cognitive bias errors as compared to the control group of journalists who are not made aware of them, while offering a novel experimental framework for exposing journalistic bias. These results help ascertain solutions for curbing bias in journalism. And finally, in leadership, since we are developing leaders who will serve God in the church around the world, successful leadership often surfaces when people become aware of critical personal experiences in their life, and they understand the driving forces, respond by thinking about self, redirect their moves, and reshape their actions. Stanford rates soft skills like self-awareness as one of the pillars of managerial capabilities that predicts managerial effectiveness and leadership success. It suggests that IQ and technical skills are far less important to leadership success than self-awareness. So we can see that there's a domino effect of self-awareness of implicit biases. We start knocking down the walls of our biases, and we can see more. After you knock them down, you can see more of the person that you're talking to. You understand them more. So now we move to multicultural classroom. Having the self-awareness of our own biases is one of the most important factors that we need to have in order to have a multicultural classroom. So what's the big deal with multicultural education, or with making sure that I have a multicultural classroom? A multicultural classroom is a safe place where students from diverse cultural, social class, racial, and ethnic groups experience an equal opportunity to learn. And that's from James Banks. And he's considered the father of multicultural education. But in the late interview that I saw him, he's considered himself as the grandfather now because he's so old now. But using one of his books in my classes as well. So students need, Students need to feel safe in order to learn, and they need to feel secure in order to want to participate. That's from Education World. So the next slide contains an embedded video on the meaning of multicultural education, and it's about 2 minutes long. So for Zoom, I'm going to count right now, and when I say 1, you can click on the play button. 3, 2, 1.
Multicultural Education Week is all about promoting diversity and cultural competency, learning about cultures from all over the world.
It's a time where we can all come together and celebrate the different cultures on campus. And so that people know that there is that we have allies, we have people here to support us and that are willing to bear our different struggles.
Having an event like this, I think, brings citizen education to the people that aren't aware of other cultures.
Just from sheer turnout, my freshman year, I can definitely, I felt as though, there was a select group of people that visited these events. It seemed like sort of a week that people, participated in, but not everyone was, behind it fully yet. But now, and especially last year, I noticed, half of the entirety of the rescue hall, people were turning up for all of the events every day of the week. Whether it was a coffee house, whether it was keynote speakers or discussion panels or the Multicultural Festival, that event in itself has gotten bigger and bigger each year.
To me, it makes me feel wanted. To know that my culture is accepted and like people are curious about my culture. And it makes me want to kind of reach out to other people and share and hear about other people's experiences.
It'll definitely help me sort of break the stereotypes that I have on certain cultures. And I get to learn a lot more, and I get to be sort of respectful to a lot more people.
It'll really help me. I'm a secondary education major, so I think going forward in my career, it's really going to help me to have like an awareness of different cultures and how they interact with other people, like in the classroom.
I'm going to be wearing my traditional outfit, so I want people to come and like learn about it, and I'm also presenting about my country, so I know I'm excited to also learn about other people's countries and like see their attire. So there's fun.
Well, the biggest thing is it's in the name itself, multicultural. It's not excluding anybody, it includes everybody. So that's something that we really want to break down those barriers and that misconception that it's just for minority students. It's always great to expand your knowledge and to become more culturally competent to learn.
Education Week.
I think I'm going to save the question that's after this because we're almost kind of out of time, but sorry. All right. The next slide contains an embedded video on the meaning of multiculturalism and the importance of asking questions about other cultures to embrace and love other people, not just because we have to work with them. All right, for Zoom, it's 3, 2, 1.
A very important conversation that has touched the surface in multicultural research is the difference between the term diversity and the term multiculturalism. The strong challenge that we have nowadays is that we wanted originally to have people to come together. We wanted to bring people who were Black, people who were white, people of different ethnicities. We wanted to bring them all to the table. And in order to bring them to the table, we had to create this vibe, this feeling of comfort, right? And this feeling of comfort, it didn't happen immediately, you know. People were told that they needed to tolerate other people. They were told that we need to bring you together for the purpose of generating this understanding of inequality. And so what we had is a society where people came together for work, but when it was time to go home, they all just parted their, they went their separate ways, and they were together because someone said so. And so as time progressed, we had to look at diversity and multiculturalism a little bit differently. What we need now in our society is an opportunity to understand people, to get to know people, not to be in a room with somebody just because somebody is telling you that you need to be there, but you need to ask questions. You need to understand what does it mean to be someone as who is a part of your culture. We're not going to say, everybody is a part of a melting pot where you eventually assimilate and you become the same. If you tolerate people, typically you may be forcing them to come together and to become one. But what multiculturalism is all about is embracing diversity. That difference is important. That is important to ask questions. It's important to understand. Not that you just bring somebody to the table and you work together for the sake of working, but know that you actually sit down with somebody and you get to know why they are here, what their purpose is, what does their culture mean, what does their identity mean. Through that, you develop a love, you develop an understanding, you develop a respect for humankind. You reach multiculturalism, where we have multiple cultures together, understanding each other, respecting each other, taking relationships to another level, not just coming in the room and being there just because you have to, but no, you're going to come in the room because you want to. And you want to understand, and you want to know why somebody else is important, not why somebody else is not like you.
All right, I have questions again, but for the sake of time, I'm gonna leave that. I can make this Nearpod as an assignment, or I don't know, some people can participate later on. It's just a matter of giving you a code. But I wanted to get to the point where it involves education itself. And I know working with Stephen in diversity and with Brian, we're looking at, and we're already, a lot of us are doing it. We are using different textbooks or literature from diverse authors. What this study is in 2020 is they actually analyzed literature authors' perspectives for hidden biases. So not only can we include materials that are diverse from diverse authors, we can also ask the student to look at literature closely and ask them, where's the hidden biases from this author? And that'll kind of help them open up and try to understand people. These are the different ideas to have a multicultural classroom. Virtual field trips, definitely love that. History teachers in K-12 use that. It's a great tool. Having diverse guest speakers, food, music, artifacts, Food is not so easy in K to 12 because little ones have allergies and they don't even know it. Music, I don't know if you guys have like a time in which people gather together as groups and they work on their stuff together, like a study hall, play a background music from another country. Artifacts, bring in different artifacts that you have. From the K to 12 school that I went to, the director of music teacher, he brings in different instruments from different countries that he visited. And he lets the students touch it. He lets the student, learn more about that and different instruments. Costumes. I don't know who's daring here to wear costumes on Cinco de Mayo. We'll see. Learning together how to say something in different languages, kind of like this one. Try that. How do you say Jesus in Albanian? How do you say Jesus in Armenian, Bosnian, Filipino, Jesucristo? So, and multicultural projects. This is what I talked about when I was talking to President Angie. I was very excited in my class this semester because they have a multicultural project. And what I wanted to do is envision their multicultural classroom so that when they teach someday, they have envisioned that. They're not gonna be so shocked. And so the multicultural project has 6 mini assignments that culminate to the final assignment. So basically what I want them to do is to gather all the learning, teaching theories that they learn, motivational theories, instructional strategies, differentiations, stuff like that. Put them all together, and I'm giving them a roster of different students, and I've done this last semester, different students who have special needs, who came from a background with a different family dynamics, come from different socioeconomic status, twins that are from this family. Twins and triplets are very common now in K to 12, just because of technology. So how do you differentiate the twins, and how do you make that multicultural for all your students? And the assignment, especially from last semester, I had them visualize their working environment so that they're not shocked. Because one of my first teaching assignments was in Hemet before, and I was shocked. I had my own biases. One Friday, I asked my students, what are you guys doing for this weekend? Isn't that exciting? And they're like, we're going to see our dad. And guys, oh, dad, okay, so divorce. I'm used to that. But no, our dad's in jail. So I was like, I was shocked and I didn't know what to say. And I think I said something stupid like, oh, I'm sorry, instead of saying something more engaging like, did you make him a car? Did you create something for him? And so yeah, I learned a lot from that incident. But also, you can apply it in your program. You can have your students visualize a multicultural church. Because most likely they're not going to be assigned to a church which is all white, old male, like my church. But, and in counseling office, they can visualize what kind of counseling office you're going to be in. You have to be ready for students or for patients or clients who are from this background and from that background. Multicultural office. And I don't know if you guys are open to it, but implicit bias tests from Harvard, there's a lot of them. Last semester, I had the students take the skin tone test. There's tests there about bias, disability, physical disability, weight, Arab, if you're from an Arab country and stuff like that. So anyways, it's a big thing. I recommend it. And so just kind of think about it, about taking the test yourself and maybe having some of your students take it. Educators shouldn't assume that students from certain backgrounds or social groups have different intellectual abilities or ambitions. And to build multicultural classrooms, educators shouldn't assume that students with certain accents to be poor writers. I had that experience when my first year in college. A professor actually told me, when he wrote my essay, I can't believe that you could write. Because, and I'm like, duh, I'm from the Philippines. We learned English in our grammar school. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure the professor was nice, but it's just kind of weird that he said that to me. Educators shouldn't assume that students with substandard writing abilities are lacking intellectual ability. And personal experience on this is my husband is very intelligent, or else I would not have married him because, you know. He used to write me love notes, and I could see some words spelled wrong in his love notes. And so I know he's smart. Maybe his writing is not as good, but you know, it just goes to say that a smart person may have some difficulty with the spelling, or with writing stuff. So now he uses Grammarly, premium account even, so he has no excuse. He uses that now every day when he writes emails to his clients. So building a multicultural classroom, just be aware of your own biases, learn about different cultures, ask students about their cultures, share about your culture, and smile. Smile is a universal way of showing acceptance.
Happiness.
And you've probably met people who have just had that permanent frown on their face. I know I've met some and I'm scared of them. But I've met some of them, and some of them actually smile like, whoa, that smile really makes a big difference. It makes me not want to be afraid of that person. And as far as listening or asking students about cultures, she's probably here somewhere. The best person that I can see as an example for that is Denise Collymore. She would ask me about my culture all the time. One day I told her, it's June 12th. It's it's our Freedom Day. It's our Independence Day in the Philippines. And she would just ask me questions like, oh, what do you do during that time? You know, and she just always has questions about my culture. She's always willing to like listen, you know, and I thought, why would you care? But, you know, I've shared with her, and everybody wants to share about where they come from and stuff. This is the last slide. And I saved it for last because it just shows the fruits of a university's efforts to follow through the multicultural education initiatives. And I know we won't have time, but one slide, it's about 8 minutes long. We had our break, so I'm gonna go ahead and start it. Oops, where's my slide? It's coming. Anyways, I like this, and too bad Marlon left because there's a Filipino dance in there that I don't know how to do because I get scared of the bamboo sticks. There, Marlon's. No, I was just showing them. There's a Filipino in here, and you see the dance tinikling.
We'll just put a person of color in something. That's diversity.
I think that's one of the main misconceptions. People just think diversity is everything physical, everything that you can see right off the bat, but it's absolutely not.
Diversity is more than race, it's more than sexuality. It has to do a lot with experiences in life.
Diversity for me is not only that you're supposed to be different, but you're also supposed to do different things.
Diversity is recognizing the different flavors of cultures and people that are part of our campus, part of our society.
Not too long when I told my friends and family I was coming to Kentucky, they're like, Jenna, are there even other Filipinos in Kentucky?
I think sometimes it can be hard to kind of recruit people to come here just because, you know, we are a state that does not have a lot of ethnic diversity. We just don't. And I think that the university is in a really unique position that we can kind of be changing that just through our own culture.
Walking on campus, usually people assume, oh yeah, you might be like an international student. I'm like, no, I'm actually from Chicago.
The university is doing a great job trying to implement these new programs, trying to implement things that promote diversity, but our student body just doesn't quite have that same attitude yet.
If we approach these issues as looking for ways to make
bigoted individuals feel really uncomfortable, where they don't feel like whatever it is that they're going to do or they're doing is acceptable, would be a step in the right direction. As long as we approach issues with that in mind, I think that we could make this a better place.
If people don't actively work towards it or be proactive with actually thinking about what other people have to say, then I don't think that's really diversity.
In many ways, an academic institution represents like a microcosm of our society. So we have people from all over the country, from different walks of life, people with socioeconomic differences. And I think that when we embrace, recognize, learn from people that are different from us, we are far better off.
And at first, sometimes it can be scary, sometimes it's challenging. People don't eat the same thing that you do. They're powdered, they like spices, their accent is different. But then when you start to know them, you may discover a different view of life.
Well, first of all, I applaud students that have the courage and curiosity to explore differences. And I think, you've got to search for the deeper truths and greater wisdom within yourself and others.
For a lot of people, the main purpose of coming to college is to just really gain a wider scope of everything that's going on in the world. So having diverse students, diverse faculty, diverse staff, it really just adds to just what you're gaining out of it.
Much of what we teach are social sciences and the humanities, and people have different experiences, and they bring those different experiences to bear on their scholarship and on their teacher. And it's important for, in today's world, in today's America, that students have an opportunity to hear lots of different viewpoints.
Students have the benefit of walking journeys that they may not otherwise walk as a result of the lived experience of their professors.
Allow students to recognize that I can do this. There are people where I want to be who look like me, who think like me, who feel like me, experience the world in a similar fashion, who are doing all the things that I want to do. That's really important to an 18-year-old kid who's trying to figure out what they want to do with the rest of their life.
It's hard to know that you want to do something that you've never seen a lot of people do, I guess. So I would apply to medical school and be a doctor. I did not see a Latina woman in scrubs until I saw my own reflection in the mirror while I was showering.
By having a multicultural staff, we can have people who can connect with their students and be those mentors to all different kinds of people.
From a student perspective, interacting with peers who have different learned life experiences than you is really, really important.
Doing that really makes you think a little bit more. It makes you evaluate what your own beliefs are, and doing that can strengthen yourself as a person as well.
The majority of people value having a campus community where everyone feels a sense of engagement and belonging, and it's maybe a very small minority that might think otherwise.
As soon as we get more involved with diversity on campus, we do have a lot of organizations that are extremely diverse.
Any student, if they're motivated enough, they can create their own organization and get it registered at UK.
There's something here, I think, for everybody, and then if it isn't, they can, like we just said, they can always start the club. And there are services here to help students to be successful. Our main goal is to retain you and then to graduate you. We want you to be successful.
So student government specifically offers multiple funding grants. These funding grants are available for any student organization.
A lot of people don't really hear about these grants or these opportunities to make your own organization.
And being able to create those communities is what is going to and does sustain individuals through their undergraduate career, through their graduate experience, and even faculty as well.
It's really hard for a lot of us students to really find out the resources that we do need and figure out what we need to do personally to get where we want to be after we're done at UK.
We are turning things around. We can't turn on a dime. We're much too big and robust. But I contend, as one who has been here 25 years, we definitely are turning things in the right direction.
This is a long battle that is going to be fought beyond the time that I'm here.
The other thing I will say, it takes all of us.
If we actually engage in conversations with people have different viewpoints than us, then both people are going to have more of an empathy for the other person, and they're also going to have more of an understanding of why they feel the way that they do.
We should encourage students of all races, classes, and creeds to go and support the multicultural organizations that already exist.
You know, we're trying to offer a variety of programs. We have built facilities. All of these come together to build community. We're a large community, and you can quickly isolate yourself. But use your opportunity at the University of Kentucky to meet different people.
I think that's the last video, and sorry I took a little over 11 o'clock, but that's it.